Hey guys, welcome back to the Utah Film Festival. I have got a couple guests with me today. We got Charla and we got Cameron. Let's see if I can pop you guys up. We got Charla and Cameron in there. Hi guys, how you doing? Yeah,
Hello.
Cameron's got a little window because he's not ready just yet. So guys, what we're going to be doing today is Charla is probably one of the best known acting coaches in Utah. She does a lot of coaching for kids and for adults. And she really specializes in virtual auditions, which is great because we're here in the age of COVID, and I don't know anybody who's doing in-person auditions anymore. But she'll teach you the art of self-tapes, the virtual auditions, how to make the background look good, how to be prepared for the audition. So not only can you do the technical side fine, but you can do the, I don't know, acting side well too. So it's kind of really important. So, Charla, I'm not a good actor. I'm not an actor, period. And so I'm going to shut up and I'm going to let you just take it if that's all right.
It is fine. Yeah. So I guess, first things first. Yes, we have definitely moved to this virtual audition thing. And I don't know that I'm an expert on virtual auditioning, but I'm certainly learning and figuring it out as we go. And so I think I'm figuring it out pretty well. Here's the thing that occurred to me the other day. As actors, as really anyone who does any occupation, we have to have tools in order to perform our job. And we have to provide those, especially as actors, because we're freelance, right? We don't have somebody who's going to hire us and pay us to have our headshots done or whatever. So in the past, our tools have been, we needed professional headshots, we needed a resume and a demo reel. And that was it, basically. A pretty good wardrobe for auditions, I would say, as well, and transportation to get yourself to auditions and to jobs. But other than that, well, okay, casting websites, things like that, Actors Access, Backstage.com. But other than that, those were kind of the expenses that we had as actors. Well, now we have to prepare in a different way, which means we have to have different equipment. And it's required of us in our jobs now. We have to have Wi-Fi, a decent Wi-Fi connection for Zoom auditions and whatever kind of virtual auditions, Skype, FaceTime, whatever you're doing. We have to have a device to do those Zoom auditions. Laptop is the best. Phone will work, but laptop is better. We have to have, for self-taping, we have to have a device to record ourselves, right? Usually a phone is fine. Those cameras are really great now. So we've got our device to record ourselves. We need to have a decent background, something nice and plain. You can buy a backdrop, you can paint a wall, you can take off some pictures from a wall. There are a lot of ways to do it. We need some lighting to make sure that we're seen. And those are kind of the bare minimums right now. This is the equipment we need as actors. So once we get all that equipment figured out, then we have to become our own production crew and figure out how to light ourselves and how to make sure that we're heard well. So there's a lot that goes into it that it's like we didn't really sign up for that as actors, we didn't think that we were going to have to be on the crew one day, but we are our own crew right now in order to even audition. So it's important. And I think a lot of actors have kind of waited and thought, well, I don't want to spend a lot of money on any of this, but it is an investment. And you really do have to spend a little bit of money to make sure that you're putting your best professional foot forward. So once you kind of figure all that out, and there's so many different ways to do it, right? I mean, like I said, with the background, just for one thing, you can take the pictures off the wall. It doesn't matter what color the backdrop is. It can be any nice neutral color. I like the blue. I have gray on the other side of this. This is one of those collapsible, what do you call them? Things that pop out. And and it comes with a stand that it hangs on. So I have a little bit of flexibility with how tall it is. If I'm doing a Zoom audition and I'm standing, I can just push up the pole and it'll be as tall as I am. The other thing you have to figure out for Zoom auditions in particular, and we'll get to the fun work of the audition, but this is just kind of all the technical stuff that I wanted to start with, because it seems not fun, but it's really the necessary stuff. The other thing with Zoom auditioning is that you have to figure out what to put your laptop on, especially for those standing auditions, because basically you should be sitting or standing appropriately how you would normally audition for that role, even if it's Zoom. Don't get sucked into that idea that you should just be sitting. So if you're standing for your Zoom audition, I've seen some actors that just get boxes, like file boxes, and load them on top of each other and kind of perch their laptop on the top, make sure that it's about eye level, because it needs to be eye level. That's the other thing that hopefully we've all learned since COVID, is that when you're doing Zoom calls, don't shoot it up your nose, right? It's not a good look. So if you don't want to worry about pulling out boxes to put your laptop on for your Zoom audition, well, then get a device, something that's going to work for you. I suggest kind of the easiest thing is to get a music stand. Get a music stand and just put it flat, put your laptop on there, and it's adjustable. You can get it as tall as you need it. I think that's a pretty economical way to go. They have other more fancy, like laptop media holders and things, but you can shop online and see what works for you. But I guarantee you've got something in your house that would work right now. So just poke around, look in your storage, see what you've got that you can make work. Outside of the Zoom, well, even with the Zoom auditions, I'll go back a little bit. The lighting issue is really important. If the Zoom audition is happening during the day, find a window. Natural light is going to be your best friend. It makes everybody look really good. Make sure it's not direct sunlight in your eyes, something that's a little diffuse and a little bit softer. You can even shut your blinds a little bit so you get a softer look on you. You can use household lamps. However, I would make sure that they're not the yellow toned warm light bulbs. I would put an LED bulb in there that's like a bright white or a daylight bulb. Those are some good ways to do it. If you can afford and want to look at some professional lighting, there are a lot of options out there. Some people are using the ring lights. I actually have a ring light, but I don't put it directly on my face because I don't really like the little halo in the eyeball that it gives you. Some people like it, some people don't. So I bounce mine off of a wall or the ceiling, depending on kind of where I want the light coming from. Right now, because the sun's going down, I needed to use a ring light. So I'm using the ring light in front of me, and it is bouncing a little bit off of the ceiling to give me some nice light here. And then all I've got are 2 household lamps with daylight bulbs in them and really soft lampshades, like a nice diffuse, so it's not going to be too bright, and it's pretty good, I think. I mean, I would audition like this for a Zoom audition. This would be my lighting that I would use. Sometimes you can use your same setup for self-tapes, the lighting. However, I've noticed that with my camera that I use for self-tapes, I need a little more lighting. So I have a whole other area right over here in my basement that is my self-tape area. I have a huge backdrop. It's a paper backdrop that comes down along the wall. And then I have a 4-point lighting system that I use. I have a key light right on the camera. I have a fill light that's an LED flat panel with a softbox on it. And then I have 2 backdrop lights that serve kind of as a hair light, and it just pops me out from that backdrop. So I look nice and good when I'm on my self tapes. So, that's the best case scenario, is that you have some kind of setup like that. But there are workarounds, and part of it is just trial and error. Get in there, get into your space. I would suggest having if you have room in your home, having a separate space that is your auditioning space, so that when you're in that little space, and it could just be a corner or just that wall that you've got, that's your dedicated audition space. If you don't have room, obviously you just have to kind of play it by ear and adjust as needed. Sound is another issue, especially for self-tapes and for Zoom auditions for different reasons. Both of those have challenges as far as sound, because with Zoom auditions, if you're using your built-in mic on your laptop and your built-in speakers, sometimes there can be an echo. It'll cut in and out occasionally, especially when someone's talking over you or with you. Like if you're doing a scene with someone on a Zoom audition, it can be kind of frustrating. So I always suggest that if you are able, that you get a wireless AirPod of some kind, something that you can, or an external mic that's a nice mic that you can get pretty close to your face without having it in the frame. You know, you don't want the big mic like here, because then it's just distracting. So so think about sound. And again, that's one of those things. Yes, it costs money. And if we are wanting to take our acting to the next level and present ourselves as professionals when we audition, it's imperative. We have to have this equipment. We have to show our best selves. The thing I like about the AirPods is that, you know, when you've got a microphone that's so close to your mouth, is that you get some of the subtleties in your voice that you can't get from the built-in microphone on your laptop or your device that you're using for your Zoom calls. So that if you're doing an audition, yeah, you can see it, but you can, you know, women have the option of kind of hiding it a little bit with the hair. I think it's just one of those things that the directors and the decision makers and casting directors are just, they understand that that's what we have to do. Yes, we're going to have something in our ear sometimes when we're auditioning. So, you know, we just kind of have to live with that. But what this offers is that subtlety in the voice, and it's not going to cut out in and out over the dialogue when you're going back and forth with your scene partner. So it's something to consider anyway. And now's a good time to buy things because a lot of things are on sale. And I hope you can even hear me whisper. That's an example of using my, yeah, anyway, you get it. All right. So I've just got to say, guys, this is really weird, just like talking to you all out in the ether world of internet land, because I'd love to have somebody that I could actually talk to. I can actually see Cameron's little picture up above, and I'm kind of talking to Cameron a little bit now. He's my student that's going to join us in a minute. So anyway, back to the virtual auditions. So once we get all the technical stuff out of the way, and we've played with it, and we figured out the perfect spot where we look good and the lighting is great and we sound good. The other thing that I would just say is, guess what? Now it's time to play, right? That's when you get to actually do the work of the actor, and you can put aside the grip and, you know, that kind of hat. You don't have to do that anymore. You just have to figure it out once and then figure out how to replicate it every time you need to do a Zoom audition or a self-tape. And hopefully that won't be too difficult. The other thing about self-tapes I would add before we get to kind of the work of the scenes and the actual audition is that because of COVID, a lot of us are stuck at home alone. If you don't live with someone or even have someone who's capable of doing helping you with your self-tape by being your reader, we need to be creative. And that's where a lot of you, I've noticed, and I've suggested this to students as well, and that is that you're getting other actors to join you on a Zoom call or FaceTime to be your reader, your virtual reader. And I think that's a great way to do it. Especially, it's much better than recording your own voice and trying to act with a voice that, you know, of a person that's not there. Eyeline is always going to help you. Looking at an actual human is wonderful, but if you have to look at a human that happens to be on your screen, that's okay too. That works. I've actually done that once. Usually my husband's readily available to be my reader, but he wasn't one time, and I had to get him on a Zoom call with me because I had a deadline. And so I put him on the Zoom call on my laptop, on my music stand, right next to my camera. And I was able to, you know, push my record button, run back into my spot, had my little monitor flipped so I could see myself, make sure I was in frame good and everything looked good technically. and we did the scene just like we would if you were in the room with me. So it's a great way to make it work. On a side note, I started a group on Facebook last year called Self Tape Reader Exchange, I think, of Salt Lake City, something like that. And basically, I wanted to create it just so that actors could get online, get on Facebook, and ask for help with self-tape readers. And this was before COVID, so the hope was that we could actually get together with each other and help by being readers in person. But it's kind of shifted now. So I like to see that people are still using it to try to find readers via Zoom that way. It's a great resource, and I wish more people would use it. So look it up on Facebook. I'll find the exact name for it, and then maybe we can share it more. But I believe it's Self Tape Reader Exchange, and it has Salt Lake City in there somewhere. Okay, so we get the audition. Let's say it's a Zoom audition, not a self-tape audition. I'll kind of walk you through my process a little bit. Let's say that our first exposure to the audition is the breakdown, right? That's what we see first. Now, it's important to know how to read that breakdown. There's a lot of information on there that is really useful. And I hear a lot of the times that actors aren't paying attention to the breakdown. They don't even know who's directing it or whatever. It's like the thing that they're focusing on is, I want to see my sides and I want to see how many lines I have to memorize. That's just kind of wasteful, right? That is the least important part. No, not the least important, but I will say a dear friend and mentor of mine, Anthony Meindl in Los Angeles, a teacher, he says that the dialogue comes last. And he means that in many, many, many ways. But I also like to think about it as far as preparing for the audition, that the dialogue is last, like get to the dialogue last. First, you need to do research. And it takes some time. And sometimes we get these kind of last minute, but we just have to spend the time that we can. And it doesn't take a ton of time, but it takes like this much time. Like you're looking at the breakdown and you're paying attention to the producer and the director, and you go, oh, the director, I've worked with him before. I remember he really likes it when actors ad-lib in auditions, or maybe you see a director on the breakdown that you don't know, and you do a little research and actors are talking about working with this director. And maybe you read an article about the fact that this director hates it when actors ad-lib or go off script in their auditions. He's a stickler for the script. You stay on it and you don't even go not even one word different. That's really useful information. So do your research. Sometimes you can't find anything, and that's okay. You just kind of have to do your best with what you've got. So you find out who the players are, who's working on this thing. If it's a television episodic, who's the network? What's the streaming service? Because that's going to also help you with tone. If we know it's a Disney Channel thing, it's much different tonally than something for network television, like NBC, Yellowstone on Paramount. That would be completely different than High School Musical on Disney Channel, right? So understanding what the show is. If it's a show that's brand new, you can't do a lot of research on it, but I guarantee you can find at least one article on the creation of it. If it's a brand new series, there's going to be something in Variety or something like that. If it's a local thing, just ask people, ask people if they've worked with this person before. Figure things out, do your research. So other than the players and the production company, you will find out the type role that you are auditioning for. It'll tell you right there. If it's a television episodic, it'll tell you if it's a co-star, guest star, series regular, whatever, blah, blah, blah. If it's a film, it'll tell you whether it's supporting, lead, day player, something much smaller, or just featured. They probably wouldn't even have a featured background on that breakdown, but sometimes they do. So learn everything you can from reading that breakdown. And I'm telling you what, it's not enough to just read your character description. read everyone's character description that is on that breakdown. You might learn something about your character by reading the description of the person that they are married to in the show or whatever, right? We learn about relationships. So read every bit of information you're getting. And then the other thing that I want you to read before you even get to your sides are the directions for the audition. If it's a Zoom audition, there are going to be specific instructions on how to make that happen. They're going to tell you framing, and they'll do it for the self-tape as well. They'll tell you where they want it framed. Read the directions, follow the directions. I've talked to Jeff and Robert and other casting directors that have said, just for God's sake, please read the directions. You know, there's stuff in there. They put it there for a reason. Those emails that we get from casting, from our agents, they don't just send them off just to hear themselves, or, you know, they don't just type these things up just to have something to do. It's important. The stuff that's in there is important. So do yourselves a favor, take the time to read it. You might find some really good little tidbit of information. For instance, like how they want your self-tape labeled, how they want your video file labeled. If they don't tell you, my default for labeling a self-tape audition, if they don't tell you, is I like to put the character name first and then my first and last name. And sometimes agency, if that makes sense to do that for the project. But every production company and every casting director is a little bit different. So you just make sure you're following those directions. So once you figure out the directions, once you know kind of what the project is, you've done a little research, then go ahead and look at your sides. And that's when the real fun begins. We get to breathe life into this paper that we've got in front of us. So where do we start? Well, where I start is I give it a really brief read through, just to get an idea of kind of how it feels coming out of my mouth and get a sense of what's happening in the story. Once I've read it out loud, then I go back and I look at all the stuff that they crossed out on the sides. So for instance, I don't know, Warren, will it allow me to share my screen? Oh, it disabled. That's okay. I can talk about it. When we have sides, a lot of the times they're all marked up, right? It's like there's there will be the first part of the scene that's got a big X over it, and then you've got an arrow where your audition is supposed to start, and then there will be something crossed out beneath it, and then sometimes it comes back and your character says something else. So don't just disregard all of that stuff. There might be some really interesting nuggets of information that will help you to flesh out this story for yourself. So oh, what's that, Warren? Okay. You just get down with your bad self, whatever you need to do. All right. So once you kind of really gone through and looked at everything on that on those audition sides, then you can get a better idea of what is the story here. Because ultimately, our job as actors is to tell the story. We are here to serve the story. We're not here to serve ourselves. So make it about the story. Figure out what's going on. Now, what I'm gonna bring Cameron on in a minute, but before I do, I want to talk about this idea of knowing the type of role that you're auditioning for. So I want to just focus on television stuff right now, television episodics. The kind of roles that we as Utah local hires tend to get are the co-star roles. The co-star size roles are the smallest speaking roles there are. Amy Jo Berman likes to call them background with lines. I don't know how I feel about that because I do a lot of co-star roles. But anyway, that's kind of true a little bit. They are normally 5 lines or less in the entire episode. You're basically in one scene. it's almost impossible that your character as a co-star character would have any kind of impact on the trajectory of the story. Or, you know what I mean? Like, it's not about you. This story is not about you. These co-star roles are roles like cashier, nurse, doctor, angry man, right? I mean, that's the kind of, we don't even get names as co-stars. So knowing how to audition for the co-star roles is in our best interest as Utah actors, because I'm telling you, you're going to get these auditions from Jeff Johnson, and that's your chance to get on these network shows. Okay, so pay attention here, because this is going to be some good stuff, I promise. So to understand the co-star roles, you also have to understand what the next role up would be, and that would be the guest star. So I think a lot of actors have made the mistake of doing a guest star read for a co-star audition rather than a co-star read for a co-star audition, and they're very different. Guest star roles are, you're probably in multiple scenes in an episode. You couldn't even be in multiple episodes if you're a recurring guest star. Oftentimes, the guest starring, the guest star character does affect the trajectory of the story. It can be, that episode can be kind of about that guest star for that one episode for the most part. So they are, so the story is a little bit more about them. So it can feel a little more indulgent. So don't make the mistake. All right. So I'm going to let's bring Cameron on, Warren. All right. So I ahead of time gave Cameron, this is Cameron Price. He's been in my class, my virtual auditioning workshop, my Actors in Lockdown workshop. And I funnily met Cameron at my front door when he was delivering me a pizza. Cameron, do you remember what you said to me when I opened the door?
I think it was like, well, if it isn't Utah's famous acting coach or something along those lines.
You did. And I was thinking, who is this guy? And what, has he been stalking me? I don't know what to do. But turns out to be a very nice guy and a good actor. And so I'm happy that he was able to join me to help demonstrate some of this auditioning stuff. So thanks, Cameron. So I gave Cameron ahead of time some sides for a co-star audition. This was a real audition that was from Blood and Oil back when we were shooting this. And I will disclose right now, I actually booked this role. But so I've got it in my repertoire of sides to use over and over and over. So it was for the admitting nurse. They called her the nurse at first, and then they changed it to admitting nurse when they cast it. So there were a couple of different nurses that were being auditioned for this episode, and this was just one of them. In the sides, there are, let me count them up here. 1, 2. There were 3 lines of dialogue that the nurse was given. We're only going to do the first 2 because there's a time change and it's a little bit clunky. So I just want to kind of focus and make it simple here. So the nurse is talking to Billy Lefevre, his name was, I don't remember. That's what it says in the script. I thought it was a different, I'm thinking of the actor's name, I think, in my head. Anyway, main character, his wife is in the hospital, surgery. It was an emergency thing. And he's concerned about the wife, wanting to get information from this nurse. So that's basically the story of it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to have Cameron do it. I'll be his reader with him, and we'll pretend that this is like a Zoom audition, sort of, in a way, because it is, because we're on Zoom and we're not in the same room. So let me get back to the right page so I am reading appropriately for you. Hang on. Okay, I've got it now. So Cameron, I want you to do it this first time. Let's just do it like you would if it were a co-star read, right? This would be an appropriate co-star read, which means you don't have to do much. It's about just being just natural and fitting into the story. Here's a really great way of thinking about co-star auditioning. The co-star roles, their purpose is to move the story along without distracting. So anything that's distracting is going to not be in your best interest as an actor, right? So so keep it simple. Remember, it's his story, it's Billy's story, it's not your story. You're just the nurse, right? Okay, you ready to try one?
Yeah. So I'll be Billy, or you'll be the nurse.
No, you're going to be the nurse.
I'm gonna be the nurse. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, I want you to do this. This will be your co-star audition
Let's do it.
as the nurse. Okay. All right, I've got mine pulled up. All right, you ready?
Mhm.
So if this were a Zoom audition, Cameron would have to slate right directly to his webcam. I'll have him do a quick slate and then we'll go into it. Go ahead, Cameron.
Cameron Lee Price.
How's my wife? Cody Lefevre? It's been 3 hours.
She's still in surgery, sir.
You must be able to tell me something, please.
Your wife is in OR2. They're waiting for a specialist to arrive. That's all I know.
Okay. Pretty simple, right? How did it feel for you?
Good. Yeah.
Pretty easy.
Straightforward.
It should
Straightforward.
be. It should feel that way. All right. So I think a lot of people are going to make the mistake where they take the sides for this this co-star audition and they try to turn it into a guest star read. Okay. So remember, if and this is a mistake, you know, making it all about you, trying to find those fun bits for yourself. And this could be much more interesting if you did it that way, but it's not the appropriate way to audition for a co-star role. So Cameron, this time I want you to do it and just, you know, change the pacing if you want to, you know, make it a little more indulgent. And, you know, I want you to really think that play it as if this is the nurse's story and we're going to see this nurse come back in another episode and maybe there's some storyline that takes this nurse in a different direction with this Billy I don't know. I mean, you know what I mean? Just make it about you as the nurse and see how different it can be. Okay, so make sure you give a nice moment before.
Mm-hmm.
Be doing something before Billy comes up to you. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
So really take that time. Do you have something you can? Okay, perfect. All right. We won't worry about the slate.
Yeah.
Okay, ready? Action. Excuse me. How is my wife? Cody Lefevre. It's been over 3 hours.
She's still in surgery, sir.
You must be able to tell me something, please.
Your wife is in OR2. They're waiting for a specialist to arrive. That's all I know.
Okay, good. It's fun, right? It's a fun thing to do, play a character, right? Which is basically what you did. You kind of just made it all about you, which would completely shoot you in the foot if you went and auditioned for this as a co-star role, right? You wouldn't get it. They'd be like, what is he doing? He doesn't know how to audition for a co-star role. So that is the difference. Thank you for showing that, Cameron. I do want to say this too, Cameron, because you missed the first week of class, but I want to talk about this idea of slating for people that are listening. Always, well, wait, I'm going to take it back here. I'm going to back up a little bit. The purpose of the slate, well, let me ask you, Cameron, what do you think the purpose of the slate is?
To
the
give
audition?
your information, to introduce yourself, for them to get a vibe of your essence as well.
Oh, okay, good. So basically that's it. You're giving him the name because it's your information. And also, this is the first impression, right? This is the very first thing they see of your audition tape, which even if it's a Zoom audition, the casting director is recording those and sharing those recordings with the decision makers. So the casting director doesn't make the decisions. They just facilitate all of these actors in the same place and make sure that the decision makers are seeing these auditions from these actors. So when the decision makers are sitting there going through the tapes, they push play on Cameron Price, and the very first thing they see is your slate. So it's your opportunity to leave a really good first impression. I always start my slate with a hi or a hello or a greeting of some kind, because it's more about showing your personality and less about the information that you're listing, right? I think I see so many actors that slate just in that robotic, like it's just they're listing information. You know, it would be like, I've literally seen people do this kind of slate. Charla Bocchicchio. Does that show you anything about my personality? And if it did, it's probably the wrong message, because that's not who I am. Right? It should be more friendly, like, you know, like you're having a conversation. It should be a full sentence, even though they'll say just give your name. Well, you can still say a hi or hello. So my slates generally tend to sound something like this. Hey there, my name is Charla Bocchicchio. You know, add a hi, hello, how you doing, whatever, something short. I mean, you don't want to obviously make it a big thing, but I would suggest that next time that you all try that, and you as well, Cameron, just the hi or the hello. It makes I think it relaxes you as an actor. It puts you at ease, and then it's going to show your personality more. So just something to consider.
Yep.
All right, so I'm gonna go to. I gave Cameron another scene to look at. Okay, let me pull mine up. All right, this one would be different. Okay, so this is, let's say that we get a breakdown. This is not for a television episodic. This is for a film. And let's say that in the breakdown, they really don't even give us a synopsis of the film. We don't have information about the story, really. We know that it's a drama. That's all. And you're playing one of the major characters. So with no information, it is possible to have a good audition, but you have to trust that the choices that you're making are going to be enough. So let's play with this, Cameron. This scene that I gave him, by the way, for those of you watching, it's really kind of an open scene that came from a book full of like classroom scenes. It's not from an actual project, but it's just kind of this dialogue that's kind of quick. It's back and forth. The lines are not very long, and it can be used in a variety of different stories and relationships and things like that. So it's kind of a fun one to play with and to mess around with making different choices. So let's see here. All righty. So let's just try, this will be a really cold version of it because neither of us have read this together. So just keep that in mind. So no pressure on this, Cameron. Let me make sure I've got yeah, okay. I'm gonna have you I'll be A and you be B this time.
Okay.
Okay, so yep. I'm the one that's first. So here's what I would suggest. And this is cold reading 101 right here. If you're given a cold read in an audition, and people think, oh, and that never happens. It's happened. Sometimes we'll go in to read for one character and the casting director will go, you know what? Can you just take these other sides and just give me a read or real quick, or, you know, take a couple minutes outside and then come back and do them. So it happens. So to know how to cold read, I think, is a really important skill. And I always tell my students that I work with in private coaching and in classes that the most important thing about doing a cold read is to make sure you're listening to the other partner, to your scene partner, to the reader, rather than reading ahead on the script. Mm-hmm. So don't get stuck in that world where you're skipping ahead to the next line, because when you're looking ahead, you're living in the future. There's no way you can be living in the present moment with that reader. It's impossible. You're already looking to a future that hasn't happened yet when you're looking ahead at your line. So trust that the line will be there when you need it. If it takes you a minute to find it, that's okay. You're still reacting as the character in that moment as you're trying to find your line on the page. So just trust that it'll be okay. And yeah, there's no mess ups, because it's life. We don't have mess ups in life, right? I mean, we do, but it's like, that's messy, and it's what life is. A normal conversation is we step on each other's lines, and we interrupt each other, and sometimes there are really awkward pauses when we're talking to someone in real life. So allow it to be whatever it is. All right, so let's try this out. You ready? I have always loved days like this.
You've got to be kidding.
Oh, it's invigorating.
Debilitating.
That's a narrow view.
A realistic view.
Realism's overrated.
Rosy-colored glasses are overrated.
All of life is overrated.
Exactly.
Let's give up.
Sounds good.
That is pathetic.
Realistic.
What is this realism kick?
It's the way I lead my life.
Huh, don't I know?
Seem to have forgotten.
How could I?
I'm not sure, but you did.
You know, there are so many possibilities,
Not in this case.
even in this case.
We're locked in.
Locked in?
Unable to move.
That's ridiculous.
What are our options?
We're free people.
We're trapped.
Trapped in your mind.
In my mind, in this situation, whatever.
Well, step outside.
Can't.
Step outside.
I wish we could.
We can.
We can't.
Well, I can.
Go for it.
I will.
I'll see you back in a few.
If I choose to.
Even if you don't, I'll see you back.
Like, all this is predetermined.
It is.
It isn't.
Believe what you want.
I will.
Because it doesn't really matter.
Of course it matters. It matters deeply.
You'll find out.
Life is good.
You'll find out.
Okay. All right. So neither of us had read that together. And it kind of worked, right? Like, there was something, I don't know. How did you feel about it, Cameron?
That was cool. At the top of page 3, the step outside, I wish we could. It was our own little secret, I feel. So that was cool. I didn't see that coming whatsoever.
That's the beautiful thing about auditioning, and really just scene work in general, is that if you try to pre-plan the way you're going to do your audition, it will be stale and it will be a performance. You have to make choices, right? And I'll talk about choices in a second. You have to make the choices that you're going to make. But beyond that, it's like freeing yourself to be in that moment with that reader, whoever's reading with you in the room, whether it be the virtual Zoom room or your reader when you're doing a self-tape, about just being present with them and letting the scene unfold in real time. Because the more we try to control it and perform it, I just feel like that paints us into a box, and it's not an interesting moment at all. It just feels like this canned, kind of stale thing that you're doing that doesn't have life to it. So talking about the choices, then, some of the choices that I do when I'm trying to get ready for an audition is, once I figure out kind of what the storyline is, then I can make some choices about Okay, first of all, who are these people to each other? Relationship. I think relationship is one of the most important choices you can make in a scene, because by changing the relationship of the other person, of you to the other person, that will change the scene entirely. And I'll show you an example of that in a minute. Other than relationship, I think if it doesn't tell you, I think another choice you can make is where the scene takes place. Because where this scene would take place would definitely change the way that it kind of unfolds. If they're in a psychiatric hospital, it's going to be different than if they're just at a park, or if they're in jail, or locked away by some predator. I don't know, or just in their kitchen. So location can be another way to kind of switch things up if you're trying to figure out how to change a read for an audition. Those are kind of the basics of relationship and where you are. Now, what happens along the way then is you figure out, okay, what is it that I want from this other person? But that's usually revealed from the relationship choice that you're making. So I'm going to give, just to move things along here, let's say that the choice that you make for this audition is that we're in a psychiatric hospital. And let's say that A, that's me, is visiting you, Cameron, and you're B. You're the patient in the psychiatric hospital. Let's say, relationship-wise, let's make this choice that I'm your mother. So I'm your mother. I'm visiting you in the psychiatric hospital. You tried to kill yourself. That's why you're here. And let's just see what happens. So literally, it's not about poring over the script and script analysis and making every tiny little choice about beats and changes and move. I think that can be a little bit of a waste of time. Now, everyone has their own method of working, and I would say whatever works for you, do it. But I like to simplify things when I'm getting ready for an audition or a scene. I like to make it simple because I find that I can then just put myself in the moment and go. And that's where the exciting part of acting is for me. So let's see what happens with just those two choices. I'm your mother, you're in the psychiatric hospital after trying to kill yourself. What happens after that happens. So let's just kind of let this scene evolve and try not to look ahead too much. All right, you ready? I've always loved days like this.
You've got to be kidding.
It's invigorating.
It's debilitating.
Well, that's a narrow view.
It's a realistic view.
Well, realism is overrated.
Yeah, rosy-colored glasses are overrated.
All of life is overrated.
Exactly.
So let's give up.
Sounds good.
That's pathetic.
Realistic.
What is this realism kick?
It's the way I lead my life.
Don't I know?
Seem to have forgotten.
How could I?
I'm not sure, but you did.
There are so many possibilities.
Not in this case.
Even in this case.
We're locked in.
Locked in?
Unable to move?
It's ridiculous.
What are our options?
We're free people.
We're trapped.
Trapped in your mind.
In my mind, in this situation, whatever.
Step outside.
I can't.
Step outside.
I wish we could.
We can.
We can't.
Well, I can.
We'll go for it.
Okay, I will.
I'll see you back in a few.
If I choose to.
Even if you don't. I'll see you back.
Like all this is predetermined.
It is.
It isn't.
Believe what you want.
I will.
Because it doesn't really matter.
It does matter. It matters deeply.
You'll find out.
Hey, life is good.
You'll find out.
How is that? Different, huh?
Yes, much, much different.
Just by changing relationship or identifying relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do it again. I want to switch roles this time. You'll do A, I'll do B, and let's make a completely different choice this time.
Uh-huh.
Let's say that we are let's say we're at a coffee shop.
Uh-huh.
And do you have an idea on relationship, or do you want me to come up with something? Let's see. Let's. Oh, okay.
Okay, warm
right.
up, flirtatious.
I like it. So let's say that. Okay, so you're A. That means you're kind of the more of the optimist. Let's say that you work at the coffee shop.
Okay.
And maybe you've got a little break here, but you've got like a crush on B here. You're hitting on her big time. Good. Let's see how that works. I don't know. So as far as what you bring to the table after that is kind of up to you, right? And you as a personality, like I want you to insert yourself into this character, and I'll do the same. I'll try to do the same. So thinking about the moment before is still important. What brings you to say this first line? The scene never starts with the first line of dialogue, and it doesn't end with the last line of dialogue. There's always something before, and there's a moment that lives on after the dialogue, right? After those parentheses of the sides. So to always acknowledge that in your auditions and live that moment before. Take the time to do that rather than just starting with a line. So let's play and see what happens. Okay.
I've always loved days like this.
Gotta be kidding.
It's invigorating.
Ah, they're debilitating.
That's a narrow view.
It's a realistic view.
Realism's overrated.
Rosy colored glasses are overrated.
All of life is overrated.
Exactly.
Let's give up.
Okay, sounds good.
That's pathetic.
It's realistic.
What is this realism kick?
It's the way I lead my life.
Oh, don't I know?
Well, maybe you seem to have forgotten.
How could I?
I'm not sure, but you did.
There are so many possibilities.
Not in this case.
Even in this case.
We're we're locked in.
Locked in?
Unable to move.
That's ridiculous.
What are our options?
We're free people.
We're trapped.
Trapped in your mind.
In my mind, in the situation, whatever.
Step outside.
I can't.
Step outside.
Oh, I wish I could. Wish we could.
We can.
We can't.
Well, I can.
Well, go for it.
I will.
I'll see you back in a few.
If I choose to.
Even if you don't. I'll see you back.
Like all this is predetermined?
It is.
It isn't.
Sleep what you want.
I will.
It doesn't really matter.
Of course it matters. It matters deeply.
Oh, you'll find out.
Life is good.
You'll find out. Now go get my coffee.
I'm still on break. So, Jeff, she wants a quad.
Okay, good. Good. So just changing the tone and the relationship and the location is different. And of course, all the dialogue doesn't exactly match perfectly to our situation because but you justify it somehow. You try to figure out how do you make it work. Good. I like that. All right, Cameron, do you have any questions, Cameron, real quick before I kind of turn it maybe to the vast majority of the people for questions?
I just want to apologize for my terrible slate. I know to say hello. My name is Cameron Lee Price.
It's okay.
So next time, this was a good learning opportunity. So I appreciate that, Charla.
You are allowed mistakes, but you don't have to apologize for anything.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks so much, Cameron, for helping me with that. That was fun. Hopefully it was useful for some of the people watching. So that's kind of a quick version of how I prepare for auditions. Now, obviously, I could go on and we could do this for like hours and hours and hours because there's so many little intricacies of auditioning, and we didn't even talk about commercial auditioning, which is a completely different beast in and of itself. You've got all these different kinds of commercials, and it really does take a different skill set. You have to understand branding and type a lot more. So if you want the full story, you're just going to have to take one of my workshops. I hate to tell you, or do some coaching with me. But I did feel like we got a good overview of kind of how to start to approach those auditions. And I will say this before we kind of go to any questions that people may have that are watching. I think in general, it's all about shifting the way we look at auditions. For me, I felt like it was a game changer for me when I was able to make that shift in my own mind, and I'll explain it. And here's what it means. If we're looking at auditioning as the big contest, or that we're trying to win the prize or book the job, then it's going to be it's going to make us nuts. The stakes are going to be too high, and we're going to have this like air of desperation about us that they're going to be able to smell on you. I guarantee it. So to instead, it's like a mindset shift. Okay, what if we start to look at auditions as the actual work? That is the work of an actor, to prepare and show up and do your work like you would if you were going to prepare to be on set for the first day of shooting. Why don't we spend that kind of effort in preparing our auditions rather than putting so much pressure on ourselves to feel like we have to get it right? Here's the good news, guys. There is no right way to do a scene. There are some more effective ways to do a scene than others, but here's the wonderful news. The rightest way is your way. It's when you really insert yourself into that story and allow yourself to live and breathe and bring those words off the page and live them, to really react to the reader that's reading with you, to be fully present and in every single moment. So stop trying to get it right. Stop trying to figure out what is the big, where's the key? What's the combination? There is none. Just do your work. Be you. Meisner said, acting is living truthfully under imaginary circumstances. Sometimes actors forget that truthfully part. They understand that it's an imaginary circumstance, but they feel like they have to perform a character, to lose themselves in a character. Well, how about if you find yourself in the character? That's always been an easier way for me to approach my work, and it tends to work for me. I book quite a bit. I book the jobs that are mine because I put myself into the character, and the directors and the producers went, oh, I guess we like that version. It's going to be different than any other version. And sometimes it's not my role. Sometimes it's so-and-so's or someone else, or, but just trust that what you're doing is enough in these auditions, and have fun. Guys, if it stops being fun for you, just go run the other way. Acting is a wonderful, joyous thing, and auditioning should be every bit as joyous. So stop making it so much work and have some fun at it. Warren, I'd love to open up to questions if anybody's got any thing to say.
Absolutely. So we do have we do have a couple comments in here I wanted to share with you. So Kimberly here, she actually loves seeing the same scene read different ways. She really liked the first one that you suggested in the asylum, and then how the contrasted really well with the romantic version. And as you point out, all the dialogue doesn't always work, but how you can just mentally put yourself somewhere else, it plays really neat. So she liked that. One of the questions we got, Lindsay asked, do you change the mood for your slate to fill a certain role or fill the role?
It's a good question. And I think every coach and every actor is going to have a different answer. But I personally don't change the mood of my slate for the role. And I understand why people want to change the mood. Because, okay, for instance, let's say you've got a really emotional scene that you have to do for your audition. And it's kind of hard to go from that slate to that highly charged emotional scene off the bat. That would be, in that case, what I would ask for if I were really an in-person or on Zoom doing that audition, is I would ask if I could do a little bit of a tail slate, if I could just slate at the end, knowing that it's emotional. And I guarantee you any casting director would be like, oh yeah, totally, I get it. If they knew that you had a super emotional scene to do, it can be kind of difficult to go from, hi, I'm Charla Bocchicchio. But it's possible, right? We can do it. So if we do have to do the slate before, keep it neutral. It doesn't have to be super cheery. It can be fairly neutral. And then take a little bit more of a beat before you go into the scene. I will say this, as far as self-taping is concerned, here's what you can do for self-taping, and this will take care of it every time. Well, there's two different things you can do. One choice for self-taping is just do a slate separately in a separate take, a separate clip, and then you can edit this slate with your audition scene to submit, rather than feeling like you have to do the slate and go right into your scene on your self-tape. That's one option. The other option, and that way you only have to do one take of the slate and then you're done, and you can work on the scene however many times you want until you get it the way you want it. The other thing is, a lot of people are not even slating anymore on self-tapes unless it specifically asks for it in the instructions for the audition. If it does not ask for a slate, don't do one. Why? I mean, why would we? Just get to the scene, get to the work. That's what they really want to see, right? Your video file is labeled with your name. So hopefully that answers your question.
I think so. So I had a question earlier as well. I've just been jotting down little notes as we've been going along. Let's say we got back past COVID and people want to go back into live auditions. A lot of times when you're going in there, it feels like it's a casting call or like a cattle call, really, right? There's a lot of people in that room. Are there tips you can give to help the actor feel more relaxed or more comfortable, or what should they be doing mentally or emotionally to prepare for that audition so that they don't go in there and bomb?
You mean when they're in the actual waiting room?
Correct.
Yeah, that's a great question. What I like to do is, because here's the trap. We all know each other in this market, or a lot of us do. So we're going to see friends and people are going to want to chit chat and all of that. Remember, you're there to do your work. Okay. It's not really supposed to be social hour. So if everyone is kind of on the same page, and in general, I've noticed that for the most part with the in-person auditions from before, that in the waiting room, people are pretty respectful of that. And kind of, first of all, at Jeff's, in the waiting area at Jeff's office, you can't talk because they could hear you. So there, there's kind of that forced quiet that kind of makes you go inward a little bit. Um, if a waiting area of a casting call is just too frenetic and there's too much energy for you, find a quiet little space in a hallway somewhere that where you're still in earshot of hearing them call your name. You've got to take ownership of your own self-care as an actor, and sometimes that requires you to shut off the social part of you for a second and focus on the work that you're about to do. So what I like to do, or what I did like to do when we were actually in person with those things, was I'd just go sit quietly. I really wouldn't, I'd smile if someone came in, but I would either have my sides in front of me, just reviewing my lines so that I, was fresh with them. Or sometimes I'd just sit and close my eyes and meditate. Sometimes, depending on if I really felt like I was pretty prepared for the scene, sometimes I'd want a distraction so that I wasn't living in the space of those sides for so long. So I would, play a game on my phone just to get my mind off of it and to kind of settle my nerves a little bit, go to something that's comfortable. But I think there's a danger of engaging another actor in conversation in the waiting room, because you run the risk of hurting their audition, right? You don't want to be that actor who's, needing to speak to everybody and have this conversation when someone might need to be looking at their lines to review. Maybe they didn't have as much time as you did to memorize the night before, and they're spending their time right now memorizing that last chunk that they just can't get. So I think being respectful all the way around is good, but taking care of yourself is of utmost importance.
Now, what would you do? What would be some advice you would give somebody who's kind of new to the acting scene, and they were contacted because they have a specific look that works for the character, but the character that they're playing is so far out from anything that they've ever even been close to or even touched in their life, they don't know how to go there. A good example is you got a really timid young actor here is now being asked to play a really assertive serial killer. What advice would you give somebody like that who's, really green and needs to go mentally somewhere that they've never had to go before?
Well, that's a tough one. Because if someone's that green, the chances of them booking that role are going to be pretty slim. But as far as auditioning for it anyway, we all have inside of us a multitude of different, we have facets of ourselves that we don't always show on a normal day, right? We're all capable of losing our tempers and saying something hateful to somebody, right? We normally don't do that, or most of us don't. But, we're all capable of hurting another person at our worst if pushed. So to remember that, okay, we don't have to really have experienced what it's like to be a serial killer to be able to play one. We have an imagination, and we are all capable of a multitude of emotions and choices that live inside of us, parts of our personalities, if you will. So I think just trusting the imaginary circumstance, because that's what you're doing, right? You're putting yourself in that imaginary circumstance, and then you're showing your version of how you would live that. So in reality, if you have kind of a quiet kid who's playing a serial killer, if he's not trying to play a character, and that's what I would say to that person, don't try to play a serial killer. Play yourself with the dialogue in that imaginary circumstance, imagining that you have this, whatever it is, this trauma that you've lived with, and you are turning it on other people, and you are getting something from killing these people, something that you need, right? Sometimes it takes a little research on the psychology of some of these people to understand kind of what goes on in the mind of a serial killer. Because nobody tries to be evil, right? Everyone behaves in a certain way thinking that they're justified, even a serial killer. So you have to understand what it is about that person that would make them do this, and then just plop yourself in that imaginary circumstance and do it the way you would do it. It would be more interesting to watch some shy, quiet kid play a serial killer, because that would add a whole level of creepy, right? That sometimes we might not get from someone who's just trying to play it evil and just bad. So I think use what you've got and make it unique. It's like that's the exciting part of acting for me, is not trying to deny who you are, not to change your real personality, but to just put your personality into that role and see how cool it can be. I don't know if that answers your question at all. It's a technical, and it's a hard thing to do to play some of those highly psychotic characters.
I think that's fantastic. Charla, thank you so much. I think we're going to go ahead and wrap things up right now. I want to thank Cameron for jumping on with Charla as well. Cameron, I see you're still there with us, but I do want to say thank you for being here and being Charla's guinea pig today. That was fantastic. Hey guys, again, thank you for being here. Now guys, next coming up, we're going to be meeting with the guys from Nuvu Thupura. They shot a film in India and in Utah. So we're going to be talking about what it was like to bring Bollywood to the Beehive State. And that'll be a really fun conversation. We have half the crew from India and half the crew is here in Utah now. And that'll be a fun little conversation. But one more time, thank you guys so much for joining us again and sharing your knowledge. That was outstanding. And we'll be right back with more great interviews with these fantastic filmmakers at 4 o'clock. Oh, no, wait, 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock. See you guys soon. Take care.
Thank you, Warren.